So if you've seen a few of the elementary videos in terms of the foundational components of what ThreeFold Grid is and what ThreeFold has built, let's spend a few minutes on talking about what you can do with it and how you can use it. And there's a few ways that you can actually get active on this grid. Just to state the obvious, this is meant to be a utility to run applications. This is not end user ready. We do depend on the rest of the world to take this forward and to start innovating on top of it. Just like with electricity, I mean, it can do many different things. You can power your computer, you can power your electric vehicle, you can do many, many different things with it. But this is the same. In the end, this creates utility for data processing and data storage. That's what it gets to you. So you'll need to have a fairly good understanding of what you can do with it. But there's lots of groups of people, communities, companies out there that need data processing and data storage and are currently consuming large quantities of that from market leaders in centralized clouds. So in order to make that a very easy change and a very easy road to move from where they are today to start consuming more and more capacity and utility from ThreeFold, we've adopted 3 technologies as interfaces to all of this. Again, under the hood, it's like what in those other videos has been explained. It's very different. It's decentralized. It uses blockchain to store workload definitions and smart contracts to payment for it. It uses 0OS on 3 nodes to actually have the execution engines sit anywhere in the world. But on the top, if you look at it, how can you get engaged with it if you don't want to be part of that whole capacity production? Then you've got a number of options to start with. First is infrastructure as code, and there's a technology out there called Terraform, which has built an interface where you can just, in a few simple lines, code deployments in the Terraform language. So if you're doing that today and you're using, because this is compatible with many, if not all of the clouds out there, if you're using Terraform to deploy your website, to deploy your CRM system, to do anything that you need to do for your company or for your organization, then you can change, because at the first top level entry of that Terraform description is which provider do you want to use. And it will probably say AWS or Google today, but you can change that into ThreeFold Grid. You can then initialize it again, and the deployments that you were doing with those clouds, those market leading clouds, will now go to the ThreeFold Grid. Obviously, you have to have some pieces in place. You have to have a wallet which is connected. You have to have an account on the grid. But that's all to be explained in wikis, and we've got good manuals and documents around that. But the brunt of it, the definition of how to deploy, what to deploy, where to deploy, is actually exactly the same. So that's a really easy way to get involved with this and to also start trialing it. And again, we'd love to invite you to do so. We've got a few forums that are out there that will help you. And we've got a manual out there that describes what needs to be done and how we actually do that. So really easy to do so. So that's number 1. Infrastructure as code allows you to make the transition from existing clouds, market leaders, to us. Then the second technology that we adopted is to actually import existing images that you might use in your Docker workloads. Again, Docker being a mainstream technology that is used to containerize applications. And any of the work that you've done historically to create images that do what you need them to do, you can import onto the grid to so-called F-lists. And there's another video of me explaining what an F-list is, but we've built an import function that any existing Docker image, whether it's a public one on the Docker Hub or whether it's a private one which you've developed locally and are using locally, all of those you can actually import. It will then automatically, without any effort, create an F-list out of it. And you can then use that F-list onto the ThreeFold Grid, which has 100% copy or 100% the same application configuration and execution of the application that you want to run. So really, really easy onboarding for everybody that is using Docker. And then thirdly, we've also adopted the Kubernetes technology. So you're able to create clusters. Again, Kubernetes clusters are a low-level primitive on 3 nodes on 0OS, and creating additional worker nodes or creating controller nodes is super easy. And once you've got that, anything that you run today in a Kubernetes cluster on any of those other clouds, you can migrate one-to-one to what you do on the grid. Even further, any framework that you might use or application that you might use to manage those Kubernetes clusters, like Container Lens or any of those other applications, kubectl being a very simple one, is something that you can actually use to manage the same cluster and the same cluster applications and processes on the ThreeFold Grid. So 3 ways of actually getting started in a really simple way and allowing you, without doing much work, without doing much change, to actually get the existing workloads that you have, to actually get the existing IT applications that you are running on the ThreeFold Grid. So with this, I would like to invite you all to actually experience that. We've got manuals for all of those 3 ways of doing it. And the onboarding process, as I said earlier, is really, really very simple.